Okay, we're live. So hello everyone. Thank you for joining us in this live event. It's awesome anyone who can join us live, and also lots of love to everyone who is watching the replay of this transmission. And today I want to expand further on a subject that we have discussed yesterday on our Patreon meeting. We discussed many things regarding Hermetic teachings as well. But mainly we were talking about like how can you clear out negative influences from your space, from your own field, since we have like so many distracting stuff coming in. And also we are experiencing many intrusion and like beings and AI like observing us and trying to manipulate our energies. And we want to talk about that today as well. Or yeah, like anyone who had any type of experiences with like you feel that you're being watched or like something is observing you or like something from afar or from the shadows from the back of your mind is like trying to influence you or like to sway you in directions which would normally not be your thing or would be something that you would not expect yourself to do. And yeah, like those stuff all can be like psychic influencing and like things coming from a distance. So yeah, like we're going to talk about like detecting those and what can you do with it. And I have prepared, I have, yeah, like yesterday we have shared that proclamation on like owning your own space and like removing everything that is not of your highest good. We'll also talk about that and what can you do with that and how this stuff can work for you in a practical sense as well. So hello, high vibrations.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
smudging sage. I'm inhaling a bit of, how do you call it? Amish? Or I'm not sure.
Anise. Anise. Oh,
Anise.
anise.
Okay.
Yeah. It depends on where you're from. The region. It's funny how some things, everything has its own, it's a language thing. So, but I've heard of it as anise when you're using it in cooking.
Really? I use it for when you have that pressure in the head or like you have headaches. It's awesome. Or if you're having migraines, it's superb. Like I highly recommend it for everyone, especially for like ascension symptoms and stuff like that. Yeah. Hello, Josie. Thank you for joining us.
I still haven't gotten it on my notifications yet that we're live, but I'm sure we are. If someone's here.
Yeah, 5 people are watching.
Oh, good. Oh, I guess, okay, if I go to your channel, I can see it. But it didn't come up in my notifications. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, like if you have any type of experiences that you want to share or you have any questions regarding like how to clear your own space and like how to clear negative influences from your own energetic field or like intrusive thoughts are coming in that are like persuading you in directions that you would not go normally. Like we're kind of going to talk about that. So what is your take on this subject, higher vibrations?
Well, thank you. There's a lot. Okay. Hey, by the way, just now I got notified that you're live. So it is working. There's a lot of different things that I've used throughout the years that have been very effective, and to the point where I've come to the realization that what if I believe in its power, then it is so, so like definitely, sweet smoke and stuff can clear out an energy space, like when you're smudging your personal space or whatever, and things like that. Any kind of sweet smoke everyone's known that for hundreds of years. It's just and to the point though that I've used so many different things that have been useful, like stones, like crystals or the noise, but like you can use all kinds of. Guardian has a cool story about this kind of stone as a pendant that I'll probably have, you might want to talk about a little bit later, but I'm just saying there's a lot of options. And I've found that if I have my intention present, then it is so. The most effective thing that I have truly found is asking for help, asking the archangels, asking, saying, I need some help right now. You don't even have to be specific. And the thing is what it comes down to is we're lighthouses. We are shining this beautiful light out into the cosmos. And those who don't have access to that readily are drawn to us, whether or not they have access to it or they just don't know they have access to it. And as a result, a lot of lower frequency energies do tend to come near our space, and in our vicinity. And as a result, there are cleansing things that we can do. One of the things I did as a younger person, I did a soul cleansing with a shaman, a Native American shaman. And that was really useful, but you don't need someone else to do it. You can do it yourself. It's just knowing that you can do it. I went on a long tangent. I apologize. There's so many different things that can be useful.
Yeah, like regarding the pendant, like the dark stones, usually obsidian is used for protection. It's also like present in many folklores and like magical stuff, that it's like some kind of magical thing that can protect you from dark energies. And in the beginning of my awakening, I had a dark obsidian pendant. It was like pretty big, like it was a thick piece of stone. And one morning, I don't remember anything, but in the morning when I woke up, it was like broken in two. So physically there was nothing that it could broke it, because I was in my bed, which is a very comfy place.
And it was quite thick too.
It was very thick too. So something like that doesn't broke into easily, I guess. Yeah. I have no clue what happened, but it was pretty weird.
That's awesome. Especially with, like you said, when you're in a space of rest, you're not going to be, I guess some people are really active sleepers, but
yeah, but you need like a hard surface to like hold it against so you can break it. And in the bed, it's like very cushiony and comfortable. You don't really have any hard surfaces, like not even your chest would be enough to like break that thick stone in two.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So maybe in the beginning we should talk. Oh, hello, Carmen. Like maybe in the beginning we could talk about like how to identify when something is coming into your space, and how does that feel, and how can you kind of like decipher that, okay, like something is trying to intrude upon me. Like most of the time, I feel like I'm going to address it briefly from my perspective, and maybe we can go deeper, but if anyone has like something to add, or maybe you want to share your experiences when you have like identified something is coming in or trying to influence you from a distance, or maybe it's in your space, like you can never know. And yeah, like most of the time, so these energies work in a way that they don't present themselves to you. So their trump card or their forte is that they work from the shadows, so they're not apparent. And the best thing that you can do against them is basically like drawing them into the known and like eliminating that hiding factor, because usually that renders them inert, or like many beings do flee because like there's some type of like bullies, many of them are like energetic bullies, that if the person that should be the victim like fights back, they flee because they can't deal with that energy. Okay, but yeah, like how can you identify it in your space or in your life? Like I think we are most exposed to those energies when we are like in a low point in our lives, like when we're going through difficulties, then like we're far more vulnerable to such influences. And that's when they can come in more, because we like have like openings for that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, like when you're going through your own things and you're like working through your own stuff and you're preoccupied with that, and that's difficult for you, it's kind of difficult in those situations to decipher if like something extra is like coming on top of that, on top of it. And most of the time it can manifest in a way that, okay, like everyone has their Achilles heel and their buttons that can be pushed, like everyone is working on something, and usually it works in a way that they amplify the negative aspects of you, basically. So if you're like a very impulsive person, or you can be easily triggered, but normally you don't do that, but they intensify that aspect of you, so they can draw upon that energy that you create in those situations. And yeah, like from that perspective, it's very difficult to sense if something is there, basically. but it can totally happen that as well. And the more apparent ones, in my opinion, are like during the night or when you're like in a rest phase. Because like during the day when we're like super busy and like we are preoccupied with 11 different stuff, it's difficult to like decipher subtle energies. But when the night comes and like everyone is going back into a restful space, and even like people around you become like calmer, and it's like much easier to catch something that's maybe shouldn't be there in your space. And usually it's like a very subtle feeling that, hey, like maybe something's not all right, or like something's a bit off. Like that's kind of how you can sense it. And you can like follow up on that trail. It's like a breadcrumb trail. Like, where is that leading? Or where is that energy coming from? And yeah, like especially like this is a kind of extreme stuff. Like when these energies are kind of like trying to condition you and to propel you in a direction that you wouldn't go, like in a very negative way, maybe to do stuff that you wouldn't do normally. Like that can, like people say that that's schizophrenia, or what is that called, like technically?
Schizophrenia?
Schizophrenia, yeah. Hey, maybe you're schizophrenic too, I don't know. Like probably some people are. But I've seen, like, I also watched some documentaries and some kind of presentations on these mental conditions like schizophrenia, and I've seen like interviews with people, and like when I was like listening to them, I was like, oh my god, like this girl, like she has an attachment on her. Like the things that she was like describing in her life that she was like fighting with, she has a freaking attachment, like something that was attached to her and was like conditioning her to, which was, I just said, like amplifying negative aspects of herself, like energetically pushing her to do stuff. And that can also totally happen, but that's kind of like an extreme in my opinion.
Right.
But it can happen in more subtle ways too. So if you're sensing that a little bit, then most likely like something from afar or something outside of you is like trying to lead you in a specific direction.
Right.
So energetically you can feed them basically, because that's all that that's where they're going for basically.
Yeah, exactly. And you can, everybody has a physical response. It's just that we're all different. Like it's really common to have, there's a handful of the most common experiences, which is like the hair standing up on the back of your neck.
Yeah, that's what I do usually.
That's yours. Mine is stomach related. Like I feel it in my, it's like I feel like that, where you just in the elevator, just before it stops, that lack of gravity for a second, that weird, that's what it feels like to me. And it's like that's my body saying, hey, pay attention, and like and not just with like energies, but also people. I can feel a person about a block away if they're not a good energy to be in their space with, and with your attachment thing you were talking about in the layers and everything, I have found personally that just from looking at people and seeing, most often the places in our auric field that is weakest for those types of things to occur are where we're having some kind of physical malady, and like most of us understand Western medicine as, my shoulder's bad, I need a surgery, I need a whatever. But most of us are just coming into realizing is that our physical hurts is our soul telling us, this is how I'm communicating. This is something that you need to deal with in an emotional or spiritual level in order for that to heal itself. It's just telling you that it's there. Anyway, though, when that's happening, when we haven't really, we're still working on that area, that work field it lowers, it's less thick, and it's easier for energies to come into our space. It's not just when we're hurting in a physical way, though. That happens too. Like our auras shrink almost. The light, it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It can be like really like 50 feet in diameter, or it can be like sucked up right next to the person. It depends on where they are energetically at that time. And so I think that that's mostly why, one of the reasons why we experience most of these occurrences at night, is that our body is tired and our body is not as energetic at that moment. And then at the same time, everyone else is quieted down. And like you said, you're not distracted by all these different things that are happening on top of all of that, and I'm that person that's always talking about using the love all the time, and I've found multiple occasions where it's like you're saying I love you as a weapon. It's kind of interesting, but like casting an I love you truth just to an energy space, it really does affect it. Like either they flee because they are not of love, or they answer back with love. And most often it's even more intense and energetic or energizing than the love that you sent out. But there's also those moments that were, I actually have had throughout my life, a hand of very few experiences in waking where I didn't know what was happening at the time. But like looking back, I mean, this is over a decade ago, and I haven't had occurrence like that since, but it was at the beginning of a really important part of my awakening. And if I told somebody about what had happened at that time, they would have called me schizophrenic, because I had these, and that was when I was like, maybe the devil's real, because I was getting strong suggestions to do things that would be horrible for my life. And how do you protect from that? Well, knowledge is the beginning, right? If you know what that is. So how do you do that? Using your spiritual discernment, guardian. Like each one of us have a different way of utilizing that. Like yours is you feel the hairs go up on the back of your neck.
Yeah, I feel like this cold, shivery stuff coming over my body. It's not a pleasant. It's not a pleasant feeling at all. Right. That's usually my body. Yeah, like usually my body says like, okay, like like okay, like something's happening.
Right. And your whole body's going into alert in some way, and everyone has a different sensation. I know some people, they find they become physically ill, like they all of a sudden are gonna throw up, or they need to rush to the bathroom, and I really am glad I don't have that one, though. That would be really inconvenient.
What do you do in that state? Like it's even more difficult to like come back from it and like repel that energy if you're like feeling very sick.
Exactly.
Hey, but maybe like people feel that because their energy is like being siphoned away. Maybe that can also lead to that sickening feeling and like feeling drained, because those attachments are like working on you and they're like siphoning away your energy, and you feel sick because you don't really have energy to function properly.
Right. And that's kind of a segue into something that I feel like is important to highlight in this conversation, is that not all, but there are a handful of individuals that I've talked to recently that had recently gone through something like this, that was more of a kind of exploring this energetic space without any kind of education, and so like
like that kind of goes into what Disciple 11.1 said. Like we're going to address that too after you finish.
Okay, yeah. So just like we have, we're just getting all this new information, and we're waking up, and it's so exciting, and all these, maybe we've heard a little bit about yoga and heard a little bit about meditation and these different things before, and channeling, and there's this excitement to want to jump down and this whole of everything and do it all at the same time, without any knowledge of what you're doing. And channeling, we all do naturally. We do it beautifully through art and writing and sculpture and music and whatever. We use that all the time and not realizing it. However, if we're seeking out to channel, it's very advisable to present a space. Like people use ceremony only because every element that you're involving in your ceremony, each candle, each when you're lighting your sage, whatever, it's preparing your own spiritual muscle of intention. This is my intention in this space, and presenting that love space, and then welcoming in individuals that are truly there to be of support to you before you start a process. It's kind of like the take care of yourself before putting on your seatbelt before you drive kind of thing, you know. And there, if you, I have heard of some examples recently where individuals were connecting with some less than positive energies and not knowing that that's what they were doing. And a really important way you can know that's what's happening, if you are feeling more drained after channeling versus charged. You know, like there's definitely, for me, after I channel, there's a little bit of a dip and a different kind of tiredness, sort of, but I'm recharged in a much more spiritual way. If I don't feel that, then I shouldn't be doing it with that energy.
Yeah, like it is a very good explanation. And I think like 2 years ago, Netflix released some kind of documentary, like Life After Death or something. And in the first episode, they were like addressing some kind of spiritualist church where they were like conducting these medium type stuff as they were like doing in the 1800s. And like people had to like hold space and like give at their energy to the channeler, and yeah, like some kind of seance. Yeah, and they said like that they are like, it uses their life force and it drains them, and sometimes it even hurts. So that's like a huge red flag. Like, no, that's not good.
Right. Yeah, and getting sick afterward, that's another, like feeling ill. You know, like your body's telling you, hey buddy, no, you know, like that's what your body's telling you. It's, yeah, you know, and also energetically you feel it. Like, my example is that's what it felt like as a child just before I told a lie. Like that, no, you know, like that energy of, I get that still. It's like, but for me, it's in my stomach. It's like, like it just, and when I feel that, throw love at it, send love to it. And, you know, it's, whatever I have belief and faith in will work. It's because I am so powerful. We all are such powerful beings. It's simply that we've been brainwashed for so long to not believe that and to not know that. And so we need to I find it's useful to use items. However, this item really doesn't need to be used because I am such a powerful being. I just I'm learning to trust myself.
Yeah, like, but they're like tools, like an extension that can like amplify or focus your own energy.
Right.
Because like you can like do stuff when you focus on it, but when your like attention needs to go elsewhere, then you're kind of like dropping that energy. And like crystals can hold space for you, and also our guides too. Yes. And I think Lisa had said that my son can smell them. So yeah, like that's also a way. It only happened for me a few times. I had that like very unpleasant, like copper type of like rusted metal kind of smell, or like petrol. I heard it from other people too, but it only happened like twice. That's when I knew like, oh my God, like something is off. Like when you're like smelling something like that far off from your environment or whatever you come in contact usually, it's like, oh, like, but it can also be a pleasant smell, like your guides, or maybe I experienced this with my deceased grandfather. Right. I was smelling his favorite flower in the room for some reason. That was a more pleasant version of it. Okay, yeah. So disciple 111, become aware of your vibrational profiles and do not ever summon a dark being. This is often done by using addictive substances which are inhabited by archons. Like I didn't know they're inhabited by them, but yeah, like using substances and you're like knocking yourself out. Excuse me. Right. Knocking yourself out basically like opens up to you for attachments and attacks, because basically you're losing control over yourself. You're like stepping back from the driver's seat and there's this void, and like something can come in to fill up that void for you in those situations. Right. And yeah, like don't summon dark beings.
Right, definitely.
Just yeah, like just as you were saying, like going into channeling and experimenting these stuff without actually preparing yourself for it, or like having the proper knowledge for it. It's like, I know, like playing with a Ouija board and like
Yeah.
bringing in weird stuff
Right.
into your space that can totally stay there afterwards. So you kind of like invited it in, and it can like linger there in the background for you for God knows how much time, until you like say like no, like leave.
Right. Yeah. Unless it's until it's addressed. It's not, it's always a temporary thing. It's simply that, if we, like, I had an attachment for like a couple of decades and I didn't know what that was. I mean, I was a very young person when it occurred, but yeah, like it can last, especially if we're giving it what it needs, and like a lot of these energies truly, from what I feel like this is correct. It just feels weird to say it, but they really truly feed off of that fear, lower spectrum experience, like I know I've said this a bunch of times, but I just feel like I have to say it again, that God is the most purest, beautiful, perfect love. And that is the experience that when we get into that place of full self-forgiveness, forgiveness of whatever else, and then that love, we're at that higher plane space. And and the opposite of that spectrum is fear. And there's a lot of things in between, and some of the closer things to fear are like shame and guilt and all those kinds of things. There's also a spectrum of activities, like regarding self-care. I, for the longest time, believed the brainwashing concept of that if I wasn't causing myself harm as a result of serving or helping someone else, it wasn't true service. Like, that is the most crazy lie that I believed forever,
Yeah.
and like, if I was suffering as a result, I was doing God's work, and like,
That
and
was
that's
in the
not
Middle
what God does.
Ages. That comes from the
Yeah,
Middle Ages.
like the flailers, and stuff,
Yeah.
and just and that's not the case. The point is to be in that place of love. And so there's a lot of things that pull us to that place of fear, not just to pull us from the love, but because in that place of fear that there's an energy that it almost looks like it's an aroma or a gas that's rising that they consume. And that's the life force that they feed off of. And so, and all the things that we can do to be closer to the spectrum of love and farther from the other side where fear resides and all the other stuff, the more the less that we find interference in these energetic ways. Like, I still get like, for me, just like you said earlier, that those surges of irritation, of like and there were times where I would suddenly get an idea that would just pop into my head, where it's like I should like bang my head on something, like just real quick. Those are psychic attacks for 100%. And like, that is not an experience that I have in any organic way, and those do occur. It's simply, now it's easy to see that or feel the energy and the shift because I've been working on it. And that's really the thing that I can really want to put off or put out there in this moment, is that just practice to know what it feels like. If you don't know what your radar sensation is, that's okay. Just, if it doesn't feel like love, then that's probably something to send love at. And if you don't know, sending love is something that is of love won't hurt it. So
yeah, like it doesn't hurt anything. They just leave if they don't want to accept it, basically.
exactly.
Yeah, and like many of us are having these experiences, especially in the beginning, when you're like experiencing these scary stuff and things come into your space.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's not necessarily for like a reason to like to bring you down, but you can use it in a positive sense to like expand your vocabulary and to learn like, okay, like when I feel that or something like that happens, like that's not good. And whenever that comes up again, then you already know like where is that from and how to deal with it, basically. And this way you're kind of like expanding your vocabulary of energies, like how does this feel, like how does that feel, and basically that's the only way you can learn. Like no one can tell you how it's going to feel for you, that specific energy. You have to like experience it for yourself. And like also with the energy draining stuff, like I've also watched some QHHT regressions on people who were like having addictions, and they were like releasing energies in specific spots of the body, and they were like going back to the root of that blockage or energy that was causing the addiction. And in so many cases it's not like a negative being or something demonic like attaching. It was just like a deceased person who after passing was in a great darkness, and he's seen a light and he was drawn towards that light because that's the only thing that he could perceive, because it was of his own vibration. Basically, like that person was experiencing the same addiction or substance abuse as the person that just had passed. So he went to that person who was like experiencing the same thing in life as he was, and he was hanging around that. And basically by that he was like amplifying that addiction and that problem for that living person here on planet Earth until it was released, because like either of them had no clue like that this was actually going on for them.
Right. And another point too, for anyone who is recently coming into a place of becoming sober after a period of addiction, there's a spiritual phenomenon that occurs that is just fascinating. But I don't know if it happens in men or not, but excuse me, hold on. Pardon me. Apparently I'm really supposed to talk about this. When you ended an addiction experience, the absence of those other energies, it's I don't know how to explain it, but it's like they are in your torso region almost. Mm-hmm. And then so when a person goes into a place of recovery or stops doing those addiction behaviors, that area 1, 2, 3, 4, that area fills with air. And so a lot of people newly in no longer participating in their addiction will find that their midriff, their center, their torso area will swell. And what that is there's just all this space left and air fills there. Just, so it's a phenomenon that I don't understand exactly, but it's interesting. And apparently I was supposed to mention it. I wanted to say too, before I forgot, while you were talking about how these negative things or these lower energies that we experience are often good for us, like before you got to that point, I started being given this visual of like the paddles they use for someone's heart that is stopped. Mm-hmm. And it was reviving the individual. Like those paddles are electricity that actually hurts. It is not fun. Like, I don't know if any of you put your finger in a socket before, but being electrocuted sucks. But they do it on purpose, and that person then is brought to life, however uncomfortable it may have been for their body. The same thing occurs for us. Like all of the people that I have been talking to over the past couple of years, and especially for sure in my experience, looking back on those really significant lower energy, lower frequency experiences that I had, yeah, they were not the most pleasant and often were very scary, but they were catalysts. They activated me. They started me. Like it's as if we have always had these abilities, Guardian. It's simply that something needed us to be inspired to try to use them with like a knee-jerk response automatically without knowing. And at that point, we were able to see that was something that we could do. So it's like, yeah, these things are negative and there's something that people are afraid of, but we all experience it, and it's actually there to help us. It's really weird.
Like that's not their intention, I think, but that's what they're doing. Yeah.
Everything like that, everything that is of the lower frequency is utilized by the higher frequency to help us. It's so fun. It's a perfect balance. It just doesn't seem like it when you're in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also wanted to say with that, you filling up with air, like when you have passed an addiction, it's kind of the same thing also energetically. Like when you have released something, there's going to be like a empty space or like a void on that
Right.
place in your field energetically. And if you don't fill it up consciously with something positive or something that you want to have, then by law, something will come to fill that space up for you. So that is why you have to be like very conscious of it. So you, after you have done like a major healing or you have let go of something, like consciously reintegrate yourself and make your entire field whole and perfect. So
Right.
nothing that you don't want to be there can come back. Because like many people experience that. I know, like I had an attachment or something, I did some kind of ceremony or cleansing and it's gone. And maybe in 2 days, I'm experiencing something similar again. Hey, like you ended a contract with a specific thing that went on, but you left the doors open and something similar came back in to fill up that space again.
Right.
So that is why you have to be like super conscious of like what you leave in your space and like with what do you fill up yourself basically.
Right.
Just the same thing as like what kind of food do you put inside your body or what kind of, I know, like media or content you're consuming. Like, are you putting a lot of fear and crap stuff in your mind, or you're focusing more on the positive and empowering things in your life?
Right. Exactly. And for me, that is light, like I can't, that's a daily, like just like showering or anything else that I do for personal hygiene. That's also an important thing. Some people called it shielding. I don't feel like mine's really a shield. It's just that I'm create as I connect just really quickly, to source. The light comes down through my crown chakra and locks in my heart chakra down through to locks in my heart chakra. At the same time, the energy from the core of Mother Earth is coming up through my chakras and then locking in the heart chakra space.
Mm-hmm.
And in that space, I breathe in the light. And then when I breathe out through my mouth, I've slowly filled this bubble of light around me. And that's like a soul bath. It's like you're taking a shower for the day, but it's for your soul. And you're feeling, like you said, there's gaps. You're going to cause yourself to have gaps all throughout your day. Especially if we connect with areas that have a lot of activity of lower frequency people, like if we're going to go hang out at I don't want to be crass. So every example I thought of, I don't know if I should say on live YouTube, but like a drug house or something. I don't know. I can't, like if you go someplace where there's like often lower frequency behavior activities going on there, it's jumping into a pool of negative stuff.
Yeah, or
And
maybe you just meet the person that you don't really like and they like trigger you in a specific direction that can also like fracture you to a certain
right,
extent.
right. And for me, my negative experiences are going to the grocery store. It's not that everybody there, it's just that there's so many different people there. And most of the people that are in stores, like the chatter, like, because I hear them, I can hear all of them, and they're all upset about spending money. Like they're all in panic mode about spending money on their groceries. And so there's this lower vibrational experience there. And so for me, I'm breathing out the light and making the bubble stay complete, this white orb around my body and my daughter. And it changes the experience. However, I have found that it's good to do that again once you return home from whatever that experience is, or interacting with a certain individual. Like the energy sent through the phone, even if you don't pick up your text to read the text, that person sent me a text, their energy is in my room now, even if I don't pick up my phone, and it's like, but all you got to do is just fill up and then ask for help. Archangel Michael is amazing. Guardian has this really cool proclamation that you're going to read too.
Yeah. I'm going to read it after you finish.
Okay.
So people don't leave.
It's just really, anything positive we can add to it is the point, and especially maintenance, daily maintenance, remembering it's just like brushing your teeth, and it doesn't take very long, 5 minutes. is more time than you would think in the meditative state like that. And especially since you're carrying it with you. Now you have that orb of light around you, you know, that you can take with you wherever you go, and just fill it back up a little bit every now and again.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Like, you don't have to sit in meditation for hours. You can do a lot just in 5 or 10 or 15 minutes too.
Yeah.
If you have like a clear intent and focus on what you want to do, and you like have a strong intent, then it can be super powerful. Or maybe if you're like having a lot of experience on how it works for you, then you can just summon that state of empowerment or protection very easily, like just by thinking about it. That can also trigger that manifestation of protection or cleansing.
Exactly.
Okay, so I want to share and read this declaration, which is kind of in a part like a contract removal, but it's more like a calling forth and transmuting energies that are having a negative influence over us. And I also like want to do like a video with this, with just me reading the proclamation and see how that helps people.
Awesome.
Okay, so before you do it, I think like I will also include the text in the description after the streaming has finished, so you can read it for yourself. Okay, so you can do it during a meditation, or like being very centered and focusing on having this intent of removing all negative influences from your field, from your space, and read it out with loud or just in your mind with a very strong intent of doing that, basically. Okay, so I state your name, proclaim my life as my own. I close all windows, portals, and doorways, allowing another to observe or manipulate my energy as far as they extend, and transmute all energies connected to this experience into the divine expression of creative love. I choose to be well, whole, and perfect of mind, body, and soul. I call forth all controlling energies experienced throughout the journey of my soul, and all those connected to those energies. I call forth all aspects of their being, all aspects of my being, and the nucleus of the soul, on all levels of consciousness, to be present and to accept this healing. I call forth all soul expressions, elementals, thought forms, patterns, and programs to stand before me as I stand before you in love. I ask you to forgive me and honor me. I forgive you and I honor you. I embrace you in love. I thank you for the lessons that we have shared. I embrace all the bonds between us in unconditional love and transmute all interfering energies into the divine expression of creative love. I call forth all laws I own, all beliefs I have, all vows I hold, all invocations I have made and received, all contracts and agreement which exist, creating distortion, illusion, images, holograms, symbols, and physical and psychic images, causing unrest within my being. I transmute it into the divine expression of creative love. I call forth all invasive energies, including thought forms, programs, or substances administered to me or created by me, forming separation, distortion, illness, or illusions within my being. I transmute you into the divine expression of creative love and return you to the Creator Source to be used in positive and productive ways. So I'm going to skip to the end when everything is summed up. I proclaim sovereignty. I proclaim dominion over my skills. I claim my free will choice. I claim dominion over my mind, body, and soul. I have grown. I am empowered. I stand in truth. I call forth and integrate my true identity, expressing itself as, and you state your name. I acknowledge all those who have shared this experience. I offer you this healing. I embrace you in unconditional love and transmute all interfering energies into the divine expression of creative love. I proclaim my peace of mind and the peace of my mind for all humanity. And the peace of mind for all humanity, sorry. And so it is.
So it is.
Okay. I will include this in the description so everyone can read it for themselves.
It was very beautiful. I've used it and I found it very effective. It's funny that there's so many little, it's almost like it's a soul activator, like it's the words that my soul needed to hear and have myself say. It was perfect. And I found myself a different person when I came out of that meditation than before I went in. A lot of these meditations are like that. It's as if we're walking through doors, like where the experience, the reality we're in is like a big labyrinth, except there's doors instead of, a maze, and just through another layer and layer and layer before, who knows how many doors there are, but each one you find that you'll never want to go back through that door again, even though it seemed like it was such a cool place to be before.
Yeah, but you kind of like moved past that experience or that stage in your evolution, and now it's just like pointless or just something that you don't prefer to experience anymore.
Exactly. There's a lot of other useful tools too. Like, I mean, I have found for the most part, what I require is the ability to calm myself, like, and in some cases that Epsom salt bath is what I need. Some cases I honestly, in every situation, going out into nature is a good tool, like if pulling away from the energies that surround us. All of us are in different parts of the world and different living situations, though we have neighbors with Wi-Fi signals. We have,
Yep.
the concrete that stone holds the negative energies, or it's the lower frequency. I don't want to say negative because it doesn't seem like it's really negative. It's just because it does serve us, whether it wants to or not, like it may be trying to do something negative to us. But anyway, these energies can stay in stone for so much longer, metals and stone. And our world is covered with concrete, and within those heaps of concrete are these thick metal rebarb. Yeah, and like, not to mention, in most vast concrete construction things like bridges and such, there are multiple individuals, their remains are still in there. Yeah. Like, I mean, and it's just a standard. And so what I'm saying is it's not that, it's just, that's a lot of stuff to have to process and then also align yourself. So to be able to remove yourself from those energies while doing these types of things, like going into a place of nature where the energy is like unharnessed, then it seems like it accelerates the experience, is what I'm trying to say. It amplifies it because I'm not distracted by trying to ward off all this other stuff. I'm able to be in my space. And that's a place where Gaia is always giving, and when I'm there, I can receive it. I'm not between a barrier of concrete and metal, like is the case when you're in a neighborhood most often.
Yeah. And I also had that experience for some reason, that when I was sometimes in a certain taxi, like I felt so sick for some reason. And for quite some time, I haven't understood like why, like, because like I've sat in that type of car before and I wasn't sick. And when I was like thinking about, like, my guides were like sending these signals like, okay, like what is the car made out of? It's made out of metal. And what is the metal made out of? It's made out of like minerals from the soil, basically. Right. And like maybe like if you have that taxi driver is like a very negative or like sick person, and they usually sit in that space all day long. Right. And that metal like absorbs their energy, and you just like sit into their bubble, basically. Right. And if you're like sensitive to it, then it's super uncomfortable.
Exactly. And that translates over to our food also. Like, like I don't know if I don't think it's just the metal content that leaches into the food from a can of food. It's also that the energies of how many have handled that. And I've taken that to a whole different, I understand why people pray over their food now. Like it was just a ritual that everybody did, and you're supposed to say thanks and all this stuff. And like, but I understand it now is that this food, you don't know how many individuals have handled it and what their experience was while they were handling it. The way that the world is now, these factories are run by people who are overworked, underpaid, and exhausted, and they're constantly being micromanaged also. So there's often an unpleasant experience passed on to that food at this point of the production of it, and this point, and this point, and over here. So like when we are praying over food, what we're doing is we're taking the negative out and then releasing it up, and then having source replace that with love, and saying love, using the words love, empowering it, or strengthening that as we turn our hands back and put that into the food before we eat it. It's holy water, you know?
Yeah, I just send it fire. It transmutes it everything. But yeah, I can feel the difference. Like 99.99% I do that to like clear the food before we eat it.
Mhm.
And like even if we like go to a wedding or something, like extend to the whole complex, like all the food is going to be transmuted,
Awesome.
just in case if later on I choose to go to the candy bar or something. And there were like a couple of occasions that I didn't have the ability to do it, like time or space or anything. And I still ate from that food. And later on, I had this like very, not sick, but like this very uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. I guess like my body was saying like, oh, like it's not good.
Right.
Like physically, it was not bad. It was something that I would have eaten anyways, but my just body reacted in that like very repulsed way, like oh my god, like what did you put in me?
Right. It almost feels like a food poisoning to me. Like, and you can really, and also, so something I've changed is that I interact with my food with my hands more, which is barbaric in some circles. You know what I mean? Like you have to have like 5 forks and a certain you know, and I'm over there like eating with my hands, you know, like, and I do that because as I touch the food, I can tell if my body wants it or not. It's not always that there's something in it. It's not always that there's, you know, it's got negative stuff or whatever. It's simply my body doesn't want that right now, and it'll tell me no, you know, and also will tell me yes. Like the food that tastes the most perfect is the stuff that your body needs right then. Sometimes the most nasty seeming food is delicious because your body needs those. Like I grew up hating beets, and beets are an important thing in my life right now, and obviously I need the iron content, you know, but like, or whatever it is, but we just rotate. And the point is though, is to make physical contact with the food. I've found that very useful, and understand why so many cultures do that.
Yeah, we have tried to. Like I found out something very interesting regarding onions. Like this is the first year that we have a garden, and before this, like in the past few years, I didn't really like onions. Especially, I don't know how you call that fresh spring green onion.
Yes.
Like you can, yeah, like you don't have to wait for it to become a bulb. You can like eat it fresh like that. And I haven't, my body rejected it for several years for the intense flavor. And my stomach was like all over the place for hours after I've eaten anything like that. And I know, like after 5 years, we had our onions, and there was anything green for the breakfast. And well, I guess I can give it a shot or something. And it tastes so good. Like it had like a really good taste to it.
Right.
And it was not at all like intrusive as the other onions were. And during my meditation, like that onion thing came up, and I received that information that, okay, like that is your garden now. And when you're like gardening, then you're like sending out signals, and all the vegetation and everything is like calibrated to your needs, basically.
Yep.
So that's your onion. That's compatible with your body.
Exactly.
That's why it tastes good, basically, for you.
Yeah. And take it a step further. So it's called a biodome. The space, that the area that we live in, scientific side note real quick, I won't go into deep detail, but the things that our body needs grows around us. It just does. Like it naturally knows, you know, okay, there's a imbalance in this or whatever, so we'll grow this. And the things that we grow in our vicinity then create these things that we need that will be most useful to us. And so that's also true for buying local. Like if you go to the farmer's market, true, in your own garden tastes even better. And the reason it tastes so good is that just that very thing. It's that it's molded to your biodome. And the closer to your biodome that you get, so your personal biodome is the space that you spend the most time. So if you're the one gardening it, then everything around that is going to have your biodome. But if it also is true for your town, it's very fascinating. Anyway, and therefore, a lot of the different vegetables that I and things like that I never cared for before, trying it from your own garden is such a different experience. It's not just that I always thought it was because I grew it. It's like pride or whatever, but it really does. It's that everything has this perfect balance. It just keeps coming back to that. Everything is provided for us. It's just reaching for it and knowing that that's the case instead of following what we've been taught all these years. It's not better or more convenient to buy a can of beans versus growing them in your garden. Yeah, it takes longer to grow them in your garden, but if you do it every year, it doesn't take long at all. You have some in a jar already.
Yeah, I mean, you have to put a lot more energy into it, but at least it was not stored in like a jar. I mean, like a metal or something.
Right.
Or like put in extra sugar or some kind of, like preservatives. Yeah.
Yeah.
For it to hold. Yeah. Yeah. Like I also got the notion that, okay, like in our culture, we're like so used to like buying anything from whatever part of the world. And like mostly our bodies are calibrated to like local stuff that grow in your vicinity.
Right.
And that's what we are like genetically and also like physically more able to utilize. Like you can still buy, I don't know, like an avocado or something from the other side of the world, but like our bodies are like not as compatible with using that type of energy as what you can grow locally, basically. And especially if like it's brought from the other side of the world, then it didn't even really have time to like mature. Like it was like taken down like green and it matured in like a container or something on a ship.
Yeah. And often they'll spray them with chemicals to make them
I
appear
haven't
to
even mentioned that.
Yeah. And the tomatoes, that's why the grocery store tomatoes, there's the inside is more white and fleshy, is that's not a mature tomato. The inside should be red. And it's because they spray it. I can't remember what it's called. It's something that starts with an E. They spray it to make it outside, make it mature quicker, but it doesn't bleach into the center of the fruit. So therefore, yeah, it's really crazy. And then also oranges they only turn orange in the most tropical regions. And so if you're buying oranges from your local, at least where I live, when I buy oranges, they are actually green. And as a green orange, it's fully developed. It simply just doesn't turn that color. What happens is we expect it to be orange because it's an orange. So they actually put a chemical in these oranges to make the peel turn orange. And that's just
awesome. Yeah.
It's repulsive. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, wow. So
yeah, it's like the same stuff with like this fast food stuff. Like it only needs to look good. It doesn't have any taste or nutrition in it.
Right.
It just looks good, and that's what's important.
Exactly.
It's like eating wax apples. Like that's some grocery stores like sell wax apples. Like it looks beautiful, but it has zero taste.
Right. And we all do what we can. Like there are some situations where it's not financially viable to buy those types of foods, and it's been done. I watched it. I found these graphs a while back that what had happened in the 80s. In the 80s, the government bought out a bunch of farms There were a lot of farmers that were losing their land for various reasons, and the government bought them, and they transformed those farms into corn and wheat farms. At that time, though, what had happened was all of a sudden produce used to be something, fresh vegetables and fruit and stuff used to be something that as a poor person, that's all you could afford. And you would have to create food from scratch that way. When that happened, then processed food became less expensive, and produce became more expensive, and it kept climbing. Like obesity in America is the perfect graph next to the climbing price of produce. And at the same time that the produce was climbing, processed food dropped. And now anyone who has a limited income, that's mostly what they can afford, are these processed junk foods that those farms they bought are growing the corn and the wheat to make, and full of all these preservatives and stuff. I mean, and it's just so sad, but it's changing. I've noticed in my local grocery, there are more options that are not quite as expensive, becoming more and more available. So I look forward to the shift keep happening in that way too, where everyone has the option to consume in a healthy way. We should have that right.
Yeah, we all like to choose what you put into your body. It's very important too.
Yeah.
Okay. So in closing, do you want to share maybe the Zoom meetings that you can hold?
Yes, thank you. There's actually one tomorrow. It's at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 hours later than normally held. I haven't put up a short yet. I'm going to do that when I hang up with this call. We also typically have them every Sunday and Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They are free. They're not recorded or aired. You don't need to come on time, and you can leave early. It's just a bunch of us on this awakening journey, like Guardian and I are kind of doing now, where we all can chat and just have the chance to be heard for maybe the first time in some cases. Well, you're welcome to come. It's free.
Yeah, and for the first time, I was able to put your channel link into the title.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like congratulations, we managed to do it.
Thank you.
Like you can connect to Higher Vibrations channel. It's in the title of this video. It's there. You just have to click on it, and it takes you to your channel. Basically, check out her stuff, and if you haven't subscribed, then please do.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, High Vibrations. We have like drifted away quite a bit from our main topic today. Hey, but that's where the flow has taken us. Okay.
It's whole body health, whole soul and body health.
Yeah, like that's also an important aspect too. Like your spirit and body as well. Okay.
Exactly.
So thank you for being here, and have an awesome weekend, and see you next week.